All right. All right. Well, minutes after. So thanks everybody for showing up to the July version of the AI Special Interest Group meeting. I'm just going to get out of the way and let Steve get going. So just want to introduce Dr. Steve Cohen, who is going to talk with us about using AI to help support your struggling students, as we all struggle with as PA educators. So Steve, I'm going to let you take it away and we'll see how long it takes us and do some Q&A at the end, hopefully.
Okay, that sounds great. Everybody see the slides okay?
Looks
Great.
good.
Yeah, I've been in PA education for about 32 years, and part of what I had been thinking over many years was how to solve this problem of remediation and comparison of a student's work over time. I know many of you have experienced kind of what I've experienced, that remediating a struggling student is two committees and 10 student progress committee meetings with donuts and emails and text messages, and it just seems to end up the same way. Can we circle back and look at this next semester? And students kind of get pushed aside with very generic commentary. And my goal was to try to improve that and personalize it and really target areas of need very quickly, both preemptively as a student is going through, particularly in the clinical year, in predicting and working towards PANCE, but also remediation for students that are struggling. And every failed exam in my mind now as a tutor and an adjunct to four programs, every failed exam to me represents really more than a score. It represents a student whose knowledge and study strategies and confidence and circumstances have fallen out of alignment. It's not that they're not smart, they're incredibly intelligent individuals. And I think our job is just simply to help them to pass the next exam for sure, but also alter their thinking and their process. And this has really helped that, to try to get them to think differently about what they know and what they don't know. So that's kind of the background behind it. I have a tutoring company. I tutor and I'm an adjunct faculty, excuse me, for medical schools and MPA schools. So that's kind of my background in that. And I know that we've got challenges. Data centers, they're popping up in Florida where I am. I'm in North Florida. They're sucking our electricity and our water. So I know that I don't want to be part of the problem, but I think it has really, really high value for us. And I think it's incumbent upon us as the end users to be involved with it at this level, at the user level and the interface level, so that we can help dictate the morals and the ethics of its use in the future. And I know that that may be a challenge, but that's certainly one of my goals as well. As I mentioned, I do have a company. It's called Clinical Edge Tutoring. Really, it's a faculty enhancement solution for individual programs that don't have the wherewithal, the manpower, need advisement, student success navigators. I can do, I've worked with PAS ones and twos, hundreds of didactic and clinical students in now 28 institutions. And I've been at it for 32 years. So I've seen these trends and I've tried to remediate my own students over time. So this was really a really strong addition to my tools, I think, for remediation. Um, this started for me back in PA school. I had a mentor. His name was Jay Garber Galbraith, and he looked me in the eye one day and he said, "Steve, don't die with your knowledge." And so that's what this is all about: is sharing knowledge with y'all, and obviously sharing knowledge with students as well. Down in the bottom, that's my daughter Kirsten. At Easter when I first started teaching, that's her blowing bubbles, and she just gave me a grandson. So really been around for a while in trying to make this happen. We all know the problem, right? The student gets their EOR scores back and it's below the mean or below your passing score. And you schedule a meeting with their advisor or maybe the clinical director, and you look at the report together and you say things like, let's study more, focus on these weak areas, focus on the high yield, and then what? And they kind of get lost. And I've had a lot of students come back or say to me after those meetings, I really don't know what to do. I don't know what to focus on. Help me organize this. And so the key issues are that the score reports tell you what happened, but it doesn't really tell you why. And I wanted to know the why. The faculty advising time is incredibly limited in programs. As you guys know, we're often reactive instead of being more proactive. And I think that's the direction I'm leaning towards, is capturing this data when students are passing, maybe even marginally, but while they're still in the program, to help them prepare for PANCE and obviously for clinical practice. Most of our advice up to now has been pretty generic and not really student specific. And I wanted to shift that. I wanted to make it very focal, very specific. And programs are seeing the same students fail in the same way multiple times. I just dealt with a student who's now failed their third EOR, passed remediation exam 1 and 2, and we're working on 3. But the pattern seems to be the same. And I just inherited her. So it's going to be interesting because I'm telling her things she's never heard before in her advisement. PANCE prep is high stakes. The window for intervention, as you know, is really narrow. We really only have 10, 11, 12 months after didactic. So what I hope to do with this process is fill in the gap with the data that it does exist, but is being extracted and brought to the student in a meaningful way. It's about reframing what the score report is capable of telling us, basically. The information's there. But one thing that we're not doing in any significant way that I tried to find the solution for is comparing that data across exams over periods of time. We get overall scores, we get national means, we get subsystem scores, but what the data actually contains is cross-task performance patterns that we really have difficulty getting out, and AI has really helped to do that. There's also these cross-exam trajectories where multiple reports analyzed together can tell you how a single item or a single category is performing over time. There is also very specific topic level gaps that are tied to the blueprint weight that this can magnify and bring out. And it also gives us a cognitive profile signal. Is it knowledge? Is it reasoning? Is it preparation? Is it some combination of all three? And it can really gain some insight into that. So the point is that the signal, the reports are already there, but we're not, at least up to this point, we have not really been extracting it appropriately. So and where does this lead? This leads to the advisement. How do we lead the student through this process? And, traditionally, as I mentioned, we review the overall score, we identify weak systems, we create these generic recommendations, and we're invariably looking at a single view, how the student did on their last EOR and dissecting that failure. We don't have a lot of time, and the one thing that the AI can do is help analyze every single data point across multiple exams. It identifies why systems are weak, which is something that we really just ventured into, very little in advisement. It can be very task specific and very topic specific. That's another thing that I think has been lost over time, is that those category scores, clinical therapeutics, etc., they get kind of lost, but they're really rich in data if you look across multiple exams. And obviously we want to keep it consistent and evidence-based. So what I created and what I've tried to project to the student is a systematic, data-driven method for enhancing that insight into their scores. What does it really mean for you individually as a student? And I can apply it across PACKRAT, EOR, remediation EOR simultaneously. And that's the beauty of it. because when you clump all that together, then you can start to suck out the trends and really what's going on across time in a meaningful way. And it produces a very structured student-facing report with very specific actionable guidance. And it's grounding in learning science, which is part of my education was an EDD, educational doctorate. I'm really interested in developing in students illness script theory, space repetition and retrieval, cognitive load theory, and very task type analysis so that they know exactly what they need to do and highlight it in that way. I don't mean to say that this is going to be a replacement for faculty. It's not. It is the data. It's not going to replace our judgment. It's not going to replace that conversation that we have to have with the student to motivate them, number one, but also to give them that information in a meaningful way based on their personality, their learning type and style. It's not a generic AI chat bot that I've created. It is very specific and it's not a one size fits all. I get that, but it has very little hallucination and it's very specific for the student. The structure of the output is really clean. It gives a performance snapshot of the scores, the national mean, gaps, and trajectory, and shows that. It also shows the students' strengths, where they're doing well, and it's amazing how many students will tell me that's the first time anybody told me that I was doing something good in advisement, they hear about all the bad, but they never hear, God, you're doing really well in this area, this area, this area. Maybe that's something you can lay off of a little bit and work on the weaknesses. It prioritizes the weaknesses and it gives it a high, moderate, and a low risk assessment tied to the trend over time. And that's helpful in when you're talking about predicting for the pants and what you need to do for the pants. It is also gives us a clinical reasoning assessment and shows us the knowledge gaps and the reasoning gaps or the preparation inconsistencies. It is a cross exam and it reveals patterns that are reflected over multiple exams. It does a risk and readiness assessment for end of curriculum and pants and it is student facing. It's written for the student. The student gets a hard copy report. They get the conversation with me or an advisor, and it's written for the student. You need to do X, Y, Z specific. And every recommendation made in the report and obviously in our advisement ties back to the data from the student's own reports. Nothing is generic, nothing is assumed, there's no hallucinations at all. It's very direct and specific language tied to the scores. It's clear prioritization, and I've provided a sample there, but it's a very structured report, and it does a lot in terms of providing data. Some of these reports are up to 10 to 12 pages long with the data, and that's another need for the faculty. The faculty needs to kind of walk through it and so that the student is completely overwhelmed, but it shows the positives and the negatives and summarizes it in sections so that it's very useful information for the student. I grounded all of this. This is a project now that's been going on almost a year. And I've grounded it as best I could in educational theory, cognitive diagnostic assessment, error analysis, particularly in medical education, which has always been my interest. As both a PA and an MD, I've seen the transitions in both arenas and how things are kind of playing out and what works and what doesn't, task type failure patterns, and also aptitude treatment interaction theory that says that different learner profiles require different instructional interventions and try to incorporate that also into the reports and the recommendations. One thing that has emerged from this is actually kind of surprised me a little bit in the beginning. What emerged was three specific profiles of students that we were dealing with. They were knowledge deficient students. You need to learn X, Y, Z, strong reasoning, but an incomplete content. And that's kind of where we are always been our fallback. But I also kind of got out of the data that the strategy deficient student. They've got inadequate content knowledge, but they consistently miss specific task types. And remember the task list that, clinical therapeutics, and those basic sciences. That's one thing that kind of surprised me and comes out in the report as well. They may know the disease, but they fail the diagnostic studies piece or the health maintenance piece. That was really interesting to see that come out of the data. And then the third profile that came out was the preparation and consistent student. They're capable of exceptional performance. They've done really well on the rotation. They're strong in live action, not a question about that. But their scores are rotation dependent rather than knowledge based. The preparation habits and the coverage of the concepts is insufficient. And again, with this kind of AI analysis, it comes out very clearly in the data and evidently, obviously, in your advisement to the student. The real outcomes is the improvement. I still get these texts and I love getting them. I passed. I love getting them because that's obviously the most important thing to the student. But it's really nice to see how the improvement has happened. And when we plug those remediation exams in or subsequent exams in to the analysis can carry you through and say, oh, that's a massive improvement or that's a deficit. Here are some of the issues. And I gave some examples here. A stellar student, I just had this student, they were 39 points below national average on their family medicine EOR, which was their second rotation. And then their remediation, they got 24 points over the national exam, a 63-point improvement just with the analysis and guiding them through what they needed to do to understand the deficits. That's an unbelievable improvement. Even the program was surprised at that. What the analysis identified for her was preparation completeness was not there. It failed. It wasn't a reasoning deficit at all. It was a preparation and the content missing from that student. I don't think I would have recognized it as I was chatting with her if I could have identified that just from our conversation or a single score. Um, in the remediation, she ended up with 8 perfect content scores, 500 on the remediation exam, had 0 on the first exam. And that's just one example of many, many. Um, so why AI and why now? Manual analysis of a single student with 4 score reports, you get the data extraction in about 30 to 90 minutes of time. The student facing report, additional 30 to 60 minutes. It's just really time intensive if you're doing this manually. And I've been there as a clinical director, a didactic director, and an advisor and full-time faculty. I suffered the time of advisement and the preparation for advisement. Versus with the AI analysis, I get a full cross-exam analysis in minutes. And it does take some time to run because it's such an extensive process. And I say process, it's not just a prompt. It's a process that I integrated through Claude paid version, and it took some time to tweak to get that, but it happens in minutes. The patient recognition, I'm sorry, the pattern recognition is systemic. It's not dependent on an advisor, my memory or my bandwidth. The report generation is structured, it's consistent, it's reproducible, and it reflects ARC-PA implications as well. The faculty role shifts from data extractor to really a clinical interpreter and a student coach, knowing the real data. It's not a replacement for the educator, and I don't mean to even imply that. It will always have a role in this interaction, but it is handling the labor of the analysis in a quality way and allows the faculty member to build relationships, be the motivator, apply clinical judgment, and really be the coach on the side, the guide on the side instead of the mathematician. Um, I, Currently, I deliver this in two ways, either to individual students with consulting and tutoring or a cohort analysis, and I can do a whole class very quickly. So what makes this different? You can ask ChatGPT to look at a score report and you get a summary of the numbers and a list of the topics to study. You could even do it over multiple reports, but what you're not getting is a cross-exam cognitive profile. And that's really what this was about, is to try to really nail where the student was. Remember learning styles, visual, auditory, great, very cursory, very rudimentary. This dives really deep into that area. How does the student learn? What are they doing wrong and how to go about fixing it? The methodology is the system and the product. The implementation is the service that we provide as faculty. And we're looking to just, build as strong a student as possible. So we spend a huge amount of resources identifying students who are struggling, and we're not so good at explaining precisely the why, and that's what this project really was all about. There's a gap between the score report and the student knowing what to do next, and this is where the students usually fail in remediation or progressing towards PANCE. But this methodology is designed to close that gap, and that's my hope is that it's not just about passing rates, but it's about producing better prepared, sharper thinking clinicians, because what this produces is a way for the student to shift their thinking about the medicine. Um, any faculty member could paste the score report into AI. We know that, and many of you have done that. Cassidy revealed to me that many institutions are very restrictive of AI in this kind of analysis, and I certainly understand that, but it is something that we need to explore further for sure. The data generated by the student, they generate data every time they take an exam and saying something specific about what they need. The question is anybody listening in a way to hear it? And I think that this AI analysis does that, or certainly moves us in a way towards that. So I appreciate it. Questions or concerns? That's kind of the system.
Thanks to you. I'll open it up to everybody else before I start throwing up all the questions that I have. Anybody wants to jump in?
Sorry, I haven't been able to watch the chat.
It's okay. There's nothing there. It was me saying that they're building a data center literally like across the street from us.
Yeah, yeah. In my state, the local governments are having to give up their utilities to private investors in the state in order to control the electricity and water. It's really frightening, actually.
Cassidy, where are you located?
I'm in Colorado, so I'm at Rocky Vista University in Parker.
Okay. Yeah, I used to practice family medicine in Lyman years ago.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll start asking questions, Steve. So, and I'm going to ask you lots of questions, and I understand that this is your job, and this is like you're building this as a business. So I don't expect you to give away all the secret sauce, but I have lots of questions with the ways that you incorporate some of the things. So
Sure.
I'm wondering, the analysis that you do, is it 100%? Is it only based or at least the AI workflow process, is it only based off of the students' score reports? Or is this incorporating information from, say, your meetings with students to kind of split them into those three different categories? Like the identification of the why, is it only based off of the data, or is it bringing other data points into, or is it only based off the score reports, or is it bringing other data into that system?
Great question. Yes, 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 and yes. So this is built in projects in Claude AI. With that, with that environment, I can use all of the above. I can use notes from advisors. And then I've created some baseline documentation about the learning theory, etc. When I do run a report, it can access those documents. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I hadn't really thought about magnifying the student interaction, but I recently threw in some meeting notes that an advisor sent me about their interaction, and then I incorporated that. I was shocked how well it integrated it into the report as part of the data. So yeah, all of the above. It's really open to your imagination about what data points you suggest, and there is no general language access at all. I've shut it off to general language. So that's how we reduce the hallucinations and making stuff up from the chiropractor's office down the street. It stays very focused on the documents that are included in the project files. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great question. And I struggled with that at the beginning because it was important to include that data. Things that the students said or reflected upon other data that was offered by the program. Yeah, absolutely. I even started to include some of the some of the didactic year data, grades. It's a little more difficult to integrate because anatomy is not taught the same way by the same person at one institution as the other. There's no real consistency but in the clinical year, most everybody's taken PAEA, endocurriculum, EOR, and PACKRAT. So there's some consistency over multiple programs and multiple students.
Okay, that was another question I was going to ask you as far as the didactic information, because I'm like, how like depending, obviously it depends on the program, right? The whatever the assessment data that you have, but like every single one of our multiple choice exam short answer and essay questions are tagged to competencies, pants task categories, organ systems, Bloom's levels, all like all that stuff. So like have you tried incorporating that stuff?
Yeah, I have. I think the biggest challenge is the content, particularly for content analysis, is the content varies so different. I'm working with two programs. One has an anatomy class that's taught by a PA, surgical PA, who's got great anatomical knowledge, but this other program is being taught by a PhD, MD anatomist. Very different constructs, very different results. Not only what they test, but the results on how it's analyzed and where the weak areas are. So I'm working on it. I'd love to be able to incorporate that in a more meaningful way, but I need some consistency in what is the baseline, information that I can extrapolate across, multiple students, and integrate appropriately with the students' clinical, their EOR scores and their PACKRAT scores, etc. I wish there was an anatomy EOR, a physiology EO. That would make it, really nice. But yeah, unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. That would be, and that's kind of the medical model, shelf exams, with anatomy, physiology, and the basics, and then working towards USMLE step one. That is kind of what's happened in medicine. It would be nice if we did that in PA education as well.
Steve, I've got a question for you, if I may.
Sure. My computer mentor. Thank you, Steve.
No, well, no, actually, I'm behind on this. Yeah, I'm interested in asking you a little bit about the technical background of this, and I'm not as familiar with Claude as I am with the Gemini system.
Right.
And so we're using Gemini, and then the next level is Notebook, which reduces the confabulation, or I hate the term hallucination because that's just totally wrong, but confabulation is more appropriate, but you know what I mean.
I agree.
But nonetheless, the big thing now from Google is, according to a workshop I attended recently, it is agentics and using an agent rather than having to reprompt. Is that the level where you are now, or have you created an agent then that you use to process this and get reports? Or is there even another level that's out? Because developments occur seems like every week. Is there something else that I'm missing or don't know about?
Yeah, I'm not sure what Claude Anthropic calls it, but it is acting as an agent. I mean, essentially, for those that don't know the project environment in Claude, what it is, it starts with a simplistic prompting, but it is creating functions that go out to a trove of documents that are dedicated to that project in order to access knowledge. And then it integrates that with the students' data to produce the report, to reproduce the output. I think that's an is what you're talking about in terms of an agent. It's
Yep.
not working off the prompt itself to create the report. It needs that data that is fed into the project file in order to make that happen. So
Okay.
I put it, there's a document on learning issues for all those things that I mentioned, all the learning theory stuff. There's a document for each one of those, and it can refer to those regularly, although it's probably already incorporated it into how it thinks because I keep it as a running project. But yeah, it is essentially acting as an agent, not a direct producer of the product.
Okay. And as I understand, an agent is something you build that does of something that you do repeatedly and want the same result based on different resources or different.
And that's the hope is that the format, the what information is included is happening for every student in the same manner. Only utilizing their data is the only thing that changes. Yes, that was the goal.
Good. Great.
I,
Thank
I,
you.
I didn't want to see 10 different style reports come out that I was handing to a program because they don't know what to do with that. But, consistent sections, this, and this are in every single report reflecting the student's individual data. That seemed to be the best way to prepare it so that the student would understand it and the program would understand it.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
Katie, got something in the chat for hold on, I'll point it up, Katie.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about FERPA. It's a great question. I'm not as concerned about FERPA, but what I produce, my understanding is FERPA compliant. And it's only shared with the student and with the program. Even in the situations where I'm an adjunct faculty. I'm not a FERPA expert though, and that's what I've been told so far, but I may have to change the structure and the process if it becomes FERPA uncompliant for any reason.
Maybe as simply as de-identifying the data.
And I should mention that when I run it, it is de-identified. I do it only with the data. There's no identification of the student name, social, anything that comes up in the PA report that would identify them, is not fed in. That is removed.
I would think that would be FERPA compliant then, perhaps.
That's what my understanding based on some pretty high deanships that have commented on it. Yeah, I assuming so. But again, not a FERPA lawyer.
Well, I'll add, Steve is not a lawyer, and anything said does not constitute legal advice. Please talk
Well,
to your institution. How about that? There we go.
that's perfect. Yeah.
Nor am I. Nor do I want to be sued.
No, no, and it's interesting. I was really worried about that at first, but the students are so thrilled with the information that they get and the performance that we've seen. the increases are just phenomenal. 63 points, 50 points, 40-point improvements is just really, really powerful. So yeah, they tend to stop thinking about suing you when they're performing, right? Isn't that how surgery is? The happy patient never sues you.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Um, quick, another question I had for you, Steve. So, uh, on understanding that all of us on the call probably would love to just be able to send you an email, have someone in the finance office send you a contract and have you proactively do this for every single student, starting with the first test of the first week of didactic all the way through until everyone has passed the PANCE. Like in all of our worlds, we all want to do that. If we don't have that capability or dirt on the finance people in order to make that happen, if people on the call or watching this later wanted to, I guess, just starting with de-identifying your students' end of rotation exam data, how could people start to explore this process on their own or within their role, even like me as a course director, something like that? What would be a good first place to start?
Um, that's a great question. This was really born of the multiple exam analysis and failure student. I don't think we're quite there with projection, and I say that loosely because if we could work towards a way to assimilate all of the national data in the same way, then it may be more predictive. I just don't think I have personally for sure, but I don't think we have enough data to predict based on a single EOR or a single PACKRAT or something like that. So my focus was the student that was referred to me, multiple failures, getting to ready to take a remediation, or multiple successes, now has failed and heading towards remediation, or some trouble and having multiple PACKRAT, EOR 1, 2, and 3, maybe more. So it's a great question. I would love to work towards that. And that may be a PAEA or larger kind of project to really coagulate national data into a predictive model. I think it could be done. It would take a little bit more programming and coding, at least in Claude to do that, but very doable. I mean, this took almost a year to put together, but with time and money, anything's possible, I guess. Where should you start? I wish I could tell you that I could export this and give it to everybody, but it because it has these multiple limbs and the documents that include student data, there's nothing really to export if you get my drift. But it starts with, some basic prompts could be actually implemented very easily to compare, throwing in the PDFs, unidentified PDFs, and compare these, and you'll get some of the same cursory data.
And I guess, Steve, like you talked about, this is your use of this process is really with students with multiple. You're saying multiple failures, so it's like multiple end of rotation exam failures, low scores on maybe PACKRAT 1, that type of thing, or all the way going out to PANCE. So
Yeah.
how many data points do you need to feel like, or maybe for your 2Ds to feel like the reports are applicable? Does that make sense? Like how many data points are required for it to be of benefit, I guess?
Yeah, good
Or is
question.
one good enough?
The more the merrier. But I can do a two exam analysis very simply. It's a good way to start. I didn't mean to say failed students. I meant to say struggling, because that everybody knows what they are. And that, by the way, that population is growing based on my business. We have too many programs and we're admitting too many students that really shouldn't be admitted to programs. I get it, we're trying to fill the slots, but it was aimed at those 10%. And the idea that they've already failed anatomy, they've struggled in physiology, they're struggling in pharmacology, and programs are trying to make decisions on, do we need to promote this person? Should this person be going to clinical rotations based on what we've seen in didactic? And I think that's the start of the answer to your question. But I can't do the didactic analysis in any meaningful way right now. But having said that, once they get PACKRAT, and a lot of programs are doing two PACKRATs and plus first EOR, I can make a reasonable intervention, and particularly if they failed one. Now, if they've just failed the first one and I've got no other data, no PACKRAT, maybe, you can do a cursory analysis. That's not a problem. You just don't get the trending. And that, to me, that's the most powerful part of this, is seeing it compared over multiple exams and identifying specifics that are constants throughout multiple exams. But yeah, your question is a good one. The more the merrier. The more data, the better.
And then I think the last question really that I had was, for these analyses are 100% centered only in a single student's data, or are you norming to their cohorts, if you will? Because that would maintain consistency across, like from the training standpoint. Are you norming to cohort, or is it a single student analysis?
I can do both. The goal was originally single student analysis and focus. But as you recognize, there is some national cohort information in the report. So it is using that in its comparison with the average PA student, the mean PA student, which is helpful because that gives them the target. I think that hopefully we can agree that if you can keep around the national mean, you're in good shape, reasonable shape. And I think that's where most scores, at least within one or two standard deviations of that, are what most programs are using. So it's certainly using that data, but no pooled numbers beyond that, just what's in the reports.
Okay, got it. I was, yes. So yes, to the national cohort. I was speaking more to like their program cohort almost.
I can do that. I've done that with one cohort recently. It was 60 students. It was first EORs, and it helped me produce was some direction for the program, students at risk, and some class trends, but it's not quite as detailed as an individual student's, obviously.
Yeah, great.
And I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me. I'm not sure how helpful that is for a program to know how a cohort is doing. I don't know.
Right. So just from my experience, so we all have, probably everyone on this call, we've all had different cohorts, right? They each have a different personality, a
Yeah,
different performance trends, different struggles with different topics.
yeah.
Just, I don't know, based on what the weather was the day that they got the heart failure lecture. Who knows, right? So as far as that goes, I don't know, but I think from a longitudinal standpoint, it probably is beneficial. Like we do analyze our end of rotation exams, the PACKRAT. We look at the general class, class performances. So we see, and we look at that. What we do it over, we have like a 3-year rolling window, right? So it's not that granular. But if we see, we know of these areas of deficit that our curriculum has. We try our best to address those, but we've got 8 months for our entire didactic phase, so it's very difficult to beef up things without slashing other stuff. So it,
Well, and that's been the program, that's been the problem long term. You identify a problem with a teaching cohort in your anatomy. It takes you 3 or 4 years to make that curriculum and or professorial change. So it's really unfortunate that we don't react to that quicker than that. But I think you're absolutely right. If we could identify data quickly and make changes on the fly, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Some institutions, as we know, they're just so slow to change curriculum and or faculty in that way. And then you got a new personality and a new cohort. So yeah, was it really them or the cohort? So yeah, tough challenge. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say hello to everybody. Hey, Sarah, Diana, Brandy, Jennifer, Liz.
any other questions from the group before I release us all? Okay. Well,
If any questions pop up, please feel free to contact me at any time. Happy to answer questions and in the future for sure, and happy to work with individual students as well.
Thank you.
thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. And I will, I'll post the recording for this. And then also I posted the link to Steve's slide deck. It's in the, like the shared resources folder on the SIG website. So I'll get that up. Hopefully I can get the recording up today. And then I'll see you guys all next month, hopefully.
Right. Thanks, Cassie.
Yeah.
Cool. City.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks,
Good seeing
everyone.
you.
You too. Very good. Hope to talk to you soon.